Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What's going on, Krystal? Why do we look so different?
A little bit of a snowstorm unusually hit the DC metro region, so wanted to keep everybody safe and not make anybody drive in when the roads were hazardous. So we are doing the show remote today. Have a fantastic show for you, though. We've got Ira Say Frimpong on, the funky academic himself. He's got a take on GameStop that I am sure you will not want to miss. We also have Zed Jelani on. He's going to talk about CNN's new efforts to literally abolish their competition, or at least severely lessen. They would object to that language, probably, Saagar. But we wanted to start with some big doings today in DC.
Yeah, that's right. So the COVID stimulus relief talks continue, and not surprisingly, it's a total disaster. So 10 Senate Republicans have banded together. Let's put this up there on the screen, which is that they have come together and they said in the spirit of unity, they're going to propose a counter-Republican proposal. Now, what's included exactly in that proposal? Well, it's not exactly clear. One of the top line things that we know, Krystal, is it's around $600 billion. So that's around, I'm not going to do math here on the spot, but a lot less than the 1.9 trillion that was proposed by Joe Biden. It's mostly an unemployment extension. And even then, it's not unemployment extension at the current levels. It's only $100 extra per week. And even then, it only goes until March. So we get a general idea of what is in this thing. And now here are the Republicans that are proposing. Let's put this up there. And this is important, which is we've got Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Bill Cassidy, Romney, Portman, Shelley Moore Capito, Todd Young, Jerry Moran, Mike Rounds, and Tom Tillis. The reason that this is important is these are like the ideological center of gravity, normie GOP senators. Like they weren't necessarily Trumpian or whatever, but they are just dyed-in-the-wool deficit hawks. And here's the problem. They are, basically setting the agenda and negotiating this thing down. And the Biden administration is giving them all the time in the world. Every day that they don't do reconciliation or move forward is a day where we don't get more aid. And just to give people an idea of what's not in this thing, let's put Jeff Stein's tweet up there on the screen. As you can see that it does not include 3 months of unemployment insurance. It's got 350. It does not include state and local aid. Doesn't include the child tax credit, the huge expansion, which I 100% support. Doesn't have a $15 minimum wage. It reduces the checks already from $1,400 to $1, and then they don't have school reopening money. So you can just see that, they're like, well, we haven't even spent some of the stuff that was allocated. And as we've said here, like the stuff that was allocated then also wasn't enough. So that's not even a very good idea. That just shows you're incompetent at putting the money out there.
Yeah, exactly right. And here's the thing that's worrying is that the Biden people seem to be taking this proposal relatively seriously, or at least they've announced that they're meeting with this group of 10 senators at the White House today. That's happening right now. I should mention, progressives have other ideas about how this relief bill should be formed. You've got a group that sent a letter asking for, rather than one-time $2,000 payments and not $1,400 payments, but to have recurring monthly $2,000 payments, which is not a crazy idea. It's what they've been doing in Canada as one example. For some reason, they never get a meeting at the White House. And look, I don't want to entirely blame the Biden people for that, because in fairness, this group of 10 and the right-wing Democrats like the Kirsten Sinemas and the Joe Manchins of the world, they're willing to play hardball and say, look, if we don't like this, we're not going to vote for it. And so what does that give you? That gives you some power. But the bottom line is here, I don't know why you are messing around with this ridiculous plan for even 1 second. Why are you even pretending that this is worthy of discussion, worthy of entertaining? Just on the checks alone, I mean, all right, you made a promise. $2,000 immediately. Like that shouldn't be negotiable. And not only did the Biden people already seize on like some latent ambiguity that they think there is between $1,400 and $2,000 because $600 checks had already gone out to push this down to $1,400. Now you want to negotiate further down to 1,000 or even entertain that. And the other thing that the Republicans are proposing that Biden has affirmatively said that he is open to, which is like an instant capitulation, is to further means test this so that a lot fewer people actually benefit from it. And these things matter because the difference between having a more universal benefit and a really hyper means tested benefit that only goes to a small slice of America, those types of things create resentment. They create a lack of support for those types of programs. And this is the lesson that we've learned throughout history. If you look at Social Security, if you look at Medicare, it's no accident that the most popular stimulus and social welfare programs in American history and in the world really are the ones that have the most universal benefit. So just on that one issue alone, your rhetoric should be like, no, it's an absolute non-starter. Why are we even talking about this? We promised our voters $2,000 and that's what we're going to do.
I completely agree with you. And it's also, it's time to call out some of my friends who are on the right too, who are like, well, unity, Biden, if he moved forward. I'm like, shut up. In the first days of the Trump administration, when they had unified control of government, they used budget reconciliation to try and repeal Obamacare. And the only reason that it didn't happen was because John McCain didn't vote for it. So that was an immediately partisan thing out the gate. Can you imagine if Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or whatever had put out like a statement, be like, please invite us to the White House so that we can help you, replace. It's like, no, it never would have happened. And nobody in the right wing media or anybody would have praised Trump for doing something like that on infrastructure, on, trade, on other stuff. Sure, 100%. But this was something which, incorrectly, in my view, that they tried to do because they thought it was a promise of the 2016 campaign, even though it was the opposite. But the point is that they were willing to use the power that they had for unified control of government immediately. Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell were like, yep, no questions. They didn't even try and do like you can come in with us. So analytically, it doesn't make any sense to try and do the opposite. And I just out here, I want the biggest, amount of checks and money to the American people as possible. And I think Biden is a fool for waiting. I mean, it's now 9 days that he's been president. That's a lot of valuable floor time, a lot. And so are you going to hit that mid-March deadline on unemployment insurance? I'm very dubious, Krystal, at this point, because they do not seem to have their act together. And we still don't have a bill on the floor. We still have speculation. Are they going to do reconciliation or not? Now, look, they probably are, but you should commit to that. Go all in. You got to start the processes because you have to officially start the clock for it to begin ticking down. And the longer and longer we wait, the more we see that likely scenario of negotiating things down like checks, of negotiating things down like school reopening dollars or vaccine dollars. I mean, the last 92,000 people died this month in January. That's insane. And there's no real urgency around any of this, even from the White House. And look, like we said, yes, the deficit Republicans are the villains here. But you know what you do with villains? You beat them or you ignore them, especially when they don't have any power.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And look, I want to say one good indication coming from the Biden White House. This is from Jared Bernstein, who's one of the economists who I think is pretty decent within the Biden team. He says, look, the American people could not care less about budget process. They need relief and they need it now, which is obviously true. No one cares if you do this through reconciliation or through regular order or how many Republicans come on board or whether you meet with Republicans at the White House before you do the thing that you want to do. They just want relief and they want it as soon as possible. And that's the urgency that you should be operating with. So far, we don't see that level of urgency here. But the fact that Jared said that at least gave me some indication of like, okay, maybe they get, and maybe this meeting is just like as a sort of symbolic gesture of course, we'll hear you out, Republicans. And of course, we want to work together in good faith before ultimately doing what they, proposed and promised to the American people, by the way. Some of the reporting around the GOP game here is you also shouldn't take this as like a gesture that they're actually willing to really work with the Biden administration. But you can't just completely like from the gates be like, absolutely no, we'll do nothing and we're going to be obstructionists the whole time. You at least have to put in some kind of an effort, some kind of a facade that you're willing to work together in good faith before stonewalling and obstructing absolutely everything. So that's the vein in which you should be viewing their efforts here. Like, obviously, their $600 billion paltry effort is absurd. It should be a non-starter. And I think with the Democratic caucus, even with as right-wing as most of this Democratic caucus is, it ultimately will be a non-starter. But in the meantime, you're wasting valuable time. And then the other thing I'm seeing from the reporting that the GOP gambit is here, that they want to say, look, maybe we can do some of the less controversial things through regular order, and then you can just go ahead and do what you want to, the more difficult things through budget reconciliation is kind of what some of the aides involved with this are proposing. But why would you do that? I mean, there's an argument to be made of just putting the $2,000 checks on the floor right away, doing that through regular order so you could get that done right away. But it just seems to me like with all of this at this point, you're wasting time. And of course, as per usual, Senator Sanders understands the game here completely. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We cannot have children in America going hungry, people being evicted, schools not open. We need to open our schools in a safe way. That's what we have to do. So the question is not bipartisanship. The question is addressing the unprecedented crises that we face right now. If Republicans want to work with us, they have better ideas on how to address those crises, that's great. But to be honest with you, I have not yet heard that.
And let's just be clear about the positioning between the Republicans and the Democrats and the progressives on all of this. I've said this a million times, but I'm just going to keep saying it. $2,000 checks, one-time checks, have 83% support. Okay. It is wildly popular and wildly popular on a bipartisan basis. Recurring monthly checks also has overwhelming majority support. If you pull every single one of the things that not only that Joe Biden has proposed, but that Bernie Sanders has proposed in the more aggressive version of budget reconciliation that he's been pushing for, these are all radically popular consensus mainstream positions. So you're dealing with what you're doing when you invite these 10 Republican senators into the White House. You're dealing with an extremist faction. Their proposal is very much outside of the mainstream of public opinion. And so you're essentially granting time, space, negotiation room to people who are extremists in comparison to the American public at large.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's exactly what it is. It's dramatically out of step. It's just, games that are being played for a false constituency of their people, and what the real constituency are donors. And then there are also, people that they think that they're really beholden to, which is like the think tank class in Washington. And I think that they're going to pay a big price for this. The only question is if Biden is going to make sure that they do by moving forward quickly. The longer he waits, the longer that this can get drawn out. Senate procedure is a long thing. Budget reconciliation, there's going to be over 1,000 amendments. Get the clock ticking now. It just makes no sense in order to keep waiting, but we'll see what the White House does.
Indeed. All right, we're going to have more Rising for you after this.